I'll be the host for the next 45 minutes or so as we dive into the most relevant real-world internal comm stories for the region. Whether you're tuning in live from Australia, New Zealand, or further afield, or catching up on demand, you're in the right place. Today's conversation is designed to be practical, honest, and full of takeaways so you can apply right away. Whether you're leading internal comms, shaping employee experience, or simply trying to make work feel more human, this session is for you. So let me introduce our guests. We're incredibly proud to have two exceptional voices with us here today. Joanna Parsons, CEO of The Curious Route and longtime communication strategist. Joanna's worked closely with global teams as they scale their comms with clarity, empathy, and real impact. And we're always excited to have her share her perspective. Thanks for joining, Joanna. And Cassandra Thurston, Global Communications Manager at Flight Centre Travel Group, brings a wealth of real-world experience to this conversation. So she's been leading the charge during some of Flight Centre's most pivotal moments, from major organisational change to global post-pandemic recovery, and has played a central role in building trust, alignment and connection across their 20,000 plus employees. It's a rare chance to go behind the scenes with someone who lives and breathes the work every day, and we're thrilled to have her join us. But before we jump in today, it's giveaway time. We're giving one lucky viewer the chance to win a $150 Visa gift card today. To enter, head over to LinkedIn right now and do two things. Follow Workvivo by Zoom and post about today's event, tagging Workvivo by Zoom, and it's that easy. Also, we'll be saving some Q&A at the end, so if you have any burning questions for us today, please pop them in the Q&A section and we'll try to get these towards the end of our time today together. Okay, so for Cassandra and Joanna, let's get stuck in today. To kick us off, I'd love to hear one piece of advice you've received throughout your comms career that has stuck with you and why. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
I'm going to be like really bold. I'm actually going to give you two that stuck with me. One was I joined a company and there was a strategy director who was about to retire. He'd been there about 40 years. And his advice to me made no sense at the time. It was so good. His advice was make a nuisance of yourself. He said, don't wait to get invited to those meetings that you need to be in. Stop asking for permission to do your job. Go and be nosy. Go and be curious. Find the information that you need. The second piece of advice that was really good was a boss I had. My biggest problem in any job is I'm always like too ambitious. I want to do everything, even when I have no budget and no resources. And she said to me, you need to under promise and over deliver. So say you're going to do this much and then you deliver this much. And that has been my mantra ever since.
Love it. Cassandra, how about yourself?
Yeah, that's such good advice. Look, the one that stuck with me over the years is around building trust with your leadership comms. So I want those on the call today to think about your favorite podcasts. So what makes it engaging? And you may think it's the actual topics, but actually it's something else. So most of the time when it comes out, it's on the same day of the week or the month. It's the same intro music, the same format. The ad breaks happen at the same part of the show each time. And it has the same sign off and exit music as well. So consistency and rhythm provides a really safe feeling in our brains, and it helps to alleviate anxious feelings of not knowing what's coming next. So this piece of advice is to apply that to your leadership comms, and that's to have consistency above all. The most important thing leaders can do is establish reliable communication rhythms. People need to know when they'll hear from leadership and what they can expect. And during uncertain times, this predictability becomes an anchor point for your employees.
Amazing. And I can see some comments there in the chat. There's a lot that resonates with the audience there. Thanks both. Cassandra, let's zoom out and start with the big picture. Flight Centre has over 20,000 employees spread across 90 countries, time zones, and varying roles. When you think about scaling culture, especially in a region like ANZ, what does that actually mean day to day? And how does internal comms show up as a driver, not just a support function?
Yeah. So look, our culture is world famous. We've got books published about it. There was recently a documentary here in Australia about our COVID journey called Grounded. So for the Aussies and the Kiwis on the call today, you'll know us as Flight Centre. So we're the red and white stores in your local shopping centre. We actually boast an average employment tenure of around 15 years, and our retention rate is over 90%, and this is all down to our culture. So what's sitting behind that unique culture is quite a complicated business. We are the world's largest travel company, as Nat said before, with 32 brands in over 90 countries. And every brand has its own flavor, its own tone of voice, and different products that they sell to different audience segmentation. So what is consistent is the basics. And that is the fact internal comms in our company is factored into everything that the brand does. So to zoom out, we've built our business upon cultural foundations of family, village, and tribe. And this structure is based on the theory that human beings have and always will have an innate need for connection, and that people are motivated when organized into teams that replicate hunter-gatherer groups. So this fosters a continuing sense of personal and social identity that's usually non-existent in large organizations of our size. So for us, family is the first building block, and the family is your individual team. It consists of a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 7 people. And a family is an intimate group of people who know each other quite well. The second part of that is our village, and this is the second layer of our structure that's comprised of 3 to 5 like-minded families. We socialize together, we participate in training sessions together, and we have celebration nights and bonding activities. And then the last piece of the structure there is tribe. And this is around a maximum of 25 teams with a single factor, such as you're all part of the same brand or you belong to the same country. And this gives our employees a sense of belonging to something that's bigger than themselves. And a tribe is a great way to connect with greater community. Now, sitting along Family Village Tribe is our core values and philosophies. And our core values of irreverence, ownership, and egalitarianism are backed up by 10 philosophies. And a practical example of this, you will see these displayed in all our stores, no matter the brand, and they are also in all our offices across the world. So as communicators, we bring our values and philosophies into every piece of comms that we produce. So how this looks like on a day-to-day basis. We are primarily a sales business. That's what we're here for. We've converted our philosophies into what we call our 7 business systems. And number 5 of that system is communication and people. And that lays out a list of ways that our team leaders and employees need to be communicating with each other. So whenever things start to feel a little bit off kilter or our sales are down, there may be some personality struggles happening within the team or region that's starting to impact on our culture. We always come back to the basics of it. The answer is always in our rituals and our philosophies, and I'll have some examples of those rituals later on.
Amazing. Love that. Love the concept of the tribe and everyone being part of the bigger picture there. That's amazing. Joanna, one for you. You've worked a lot, I guess, with comms teams trying to scale. From your view, what do most companies get wrong when it comes to internal comms during growth? And what do some companies get right that others can learn from?
I think a very common mistake that I see is when a company is trying to scale, that they can be a little bit perhaps sentimental about how they've been operating so far and a little bit resistant to change. So perhaps if you have a small company that starts with 20, 30, 50 people, and every Monday the CEO does an update directly with them for an hour, a kind of an informal town hall, and the CEO's chatting and everything's quite like intimate, and this is how they communicate. But as the company scales, as that becomes 500 people, 1,000 people, do you really want to essentially shut down the business for an hour a week so the CEO can have a chat about whatever's on his mind? Probably not. And I do see sometimes, especially if it's a founder-led business, there can be a little bit of emotional resistance to changing. Well, that's how we started. That's how we do things here. That's our culture here. So I think that can be a mistake. And then on the other side of that, the things that companies can do well is they understand that scale requires systems. Like you need boring things like governance and processes and workflows and really clear roles and responsibilities. And there's a kind of an understanding that like at 20 people you can wing it, but 20,000 people, you need exactly what Cassandra's talking about there. You need documents and rituals and clear understanding for everybody. And of course, the thing that companies will do right as they scale, I know I'm preaching to the choir here with this audience, they will invest in an internal comms team, because they will understand that that is so important, not just for like making the employees feel good or feel included, but for business success, to keep the business running well. You need comms professionals that can be often like the broker between what the leaders are saying and what the employees are hearing, and you need someone to bridge that gap.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's some definitely some great advice. And as boring as processes and governance is, it's definitely important as you scale. Absolutely. Cassandra, one for you, back to you. I know today's audience would love to get a behind the scenes look. So let's get practical. What are some practical examples of comms campaigns, channels, or rituals that help keep 20,000 employees connected and aligned across multiple locations?
Yeah, so as Joanna just said before, it is really important as you start to scale that you've got that structure in place and you start to bring rituals into your organization. So for us, rituals is where we start, and it really has been key to our success, connecting people with our culture. So under our business systems, each team, no matter the brand, the function, the country, you all follow the same recipe. We always start with an AM planner. So in store, this is the store manager sitting down with the team to run through the day's priorities. In our head office, it could be a project team checking in before their project meetings kick off. Each week we have something called a WBM. That's a weekly business meeting. These are longer format. It goes into a bit more detail, like what kind of training's coming up, what incentives are coming through. We also include things like important business announcements. Another ritual is town halls. So that's something that'll be really familiar with people on the call today. We are huge fans of those. And we also have something called Buzz Nights, which is centered around reward and recognition of our people, and they happen monthly as well. And this goes all the way up to major company events like our global gathering that was held in Los Angeles last week. We fly out around 3,000 of our top performers to a destination around the world, and essentially it's a huge party that goes on for 48 hours. And that's a really important ritual for us. Because it rewards, it recognizes, it celebrates, and it also just gives people that incentive throughout the year. You know, you really want to be able to go to global gathering because of how fantastic the experience is. So every part of our rituals, we do center them around connection and information. So if you happen to change brands within our company, and that happens a lot, we really do advocate it. It's something called Brightness of Future for us. I've had 6 different jobs in the company so far. If you move to a new region or you go to the other side of the world, you will have the exact same set of rituals to follow in your new brand. So it will feel very familiar. And as communicators, we know those rituals, so they become part of our toolkit when we need to get our messaging out to the business.
Amazing. Love those examples. Very exciting about the events as well, and the special focus on reward and recognition there. Joanna, have you any examples of comms campaign, any that you can share that have helped keep frontline workers aligned?
Yeah, before I jump into my story, I love what Cass is saying there about rituals. I was at this conference years ago and it was about remote working. And there was this speaker who said something I'd never considered, but he wasn't talking about frontline workers, but he was talking about remote workers. But the same applies. He talked about how do you create a sense of belonging when everyone is dispersed and in different locations. And he said, the key is to look at the rituals of sports teams. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not following this. And he said, think about Manchester United. They have thousands, if not millions, of supporters all over the world who feel like they belong to that team. They've probably never been to Manchester, but they have all these rituals. They have a uniform, they have the symbols, they have the colours, they have the songs, they have the dance that they do after they score a goal. And I just thought that was fascinating. And to bring that concept of rituals to create that sense of belonging inside an organisation, something I think about a lot. And I love to hear that Flight Centre are like ahead of the pack and already doing that. And in terms of your question, I do have a comms campaign. So I used to be head of internal communications in An Garda Síochána, which is the Irish National Police Force. About 20,000 employees and like mostly police officers. So different shifts, different locations all over the country, not sitting at desks. And I was there doing that job during COVID-19. And like, can you imagine me? I'd been in the job about 9 months I had a strategy, I had a plan, and then COVID hit, and sure, everything went out the window. And everything was quite chaotic, and everything was quite confusing, and everyone felt a bit like, I don't know what to do. So, really, in that moment, like all of the communications, campaigns, and everything that I created focused on one thing and one thing alone, which was the mission of the organization. And lucky for me, the mission was keeping people safe. So literally talked about the mission till we were blue in the face and used that as the thread to bring people together and to remember why we're doing things. So like we were doing hand washing posters and you're washing your hands because you're keeping people safe. We were trying to explain how do you do social distancing when you're a police officer and all the different things they had to do and all of these protocols, you're doing them to keep people safe, both the Irish public and each other. And we had it on the printed materials, we had it on every leadership thing, we had it on every story. We even had like Irish police officers are quite fun, like they're up for helping with comms a lot. So I remember there was a couple of police officers like wrapped police tape around their bodies and then stood 2 meters apart and like sent that picture in for the newsletter to demonstrate what does 2 meters distancing look like. And they were doing that to keep people safe. So we just kept coming back to that and back to that and back to that. So in a situation where everything was changing, that was the thing that was constant. That was the thing that wasn't changing. And we kept bringing people back to that.
I love that. And I guess it would just be so super focused on just keeping people safe and how easy some of those initiatives would have been around that. So well done. Cassandra, back to you. Recently you spoke at Workvivo Engage in Melbourne, one of our events, about the role of comms during uncertainty. Given the reality that 87% of frontline workers globally say they don't feel connected to company culture, how do you approach bridging that gap at Flight Centre, especially through major change?
Yeah, certainly. So look, our founder and CEO, Graham Turner, or Screw, as he's known, is quite a transparent person. And the Aussies on the call today, you would have seen him at some stage on the Today Show or the 6 p.m. news bulletin. Look, the man calls a spade, and he doesn't hide anything from his employees. And we've been very fortunate because through this transparency, that has really helped us build up our culture and, obviously leaning into our values of egalitarianism, ownership and irreverence has worked out quite well for us. So for example, egalitarianism, everyone is equal. Our senior leaders, they don't have executive assistants, they don't have paid car parks, they don't even have their own offices. Screw sits out in the open plan office with all of us. He really does believe there should be no difference between what frontline and retail teams experience and what head office experiences as well. And up until recently, office employees wore the same uniform as our people in store, and Screw still does to this day. There'll be no taking that uniform off him. So through major periods of change and uncertainty, we lean into that. And the balance for us as communicators is around 4 key parts. So the first one for us is structured honesty. And it's something my communication team developed during COVID. And this is a framework that always includes 3 elements. One is the current reality, however difficult, the actions we're taking, and then the future we are working towards. And this prevents us from sugarcoating challenges while ensuring we provide direction and hope. The second part of that is acknowledging emotions, and we give people permission to feel worried or scared or frustrated. And our leaders openly share their own concerns and uncertainties too, because we've got psychological safety. And that shows that having difficult emotions does not mean losing faith in our future. We also have evidence-based optimism. So rather than empty platitudes or toxic positivity, we ground our hope in really concrete actions and wins, and we celebrate every milestone when we go through periods like this. So whether it was a successful cost reduction, or sales have gone up, a new partnership is formed, we've got some positive customer feedback. Our leaders are out there on Workplace, which is about to become Workvivo, celebrating that as well. So we show our people that recovery is actually built on 100 of small positive steps. It's not one massive dramatic turnaround. And then we also talk about our future visioning. So we share our vision of what it's going to look like post-change. We'll be stronger, more resilient. We involve our people in planning for that future, and We make them active participants in the change rather than the passive recipient of the update. And the result for us is that, going through COVID and, having to lay off 17,000 people in one hit, our people actually felt very informed and included during that. They weren't blindsided or abandoned. And so when we look back on that period of change, it really was using this communication model that increased, belief in what we were doing. And I talked about psychological safety before as well. And it's because we've proved that we would tell them the truth, even when it was really difficult for us to do so.
That's amazing. The trust that you've built with the employees is just incredible. Joanna, one for you. Something we hear a lot about when we hear about scaling culture is linking things back to the vision, mission, and values. How do you do that, and where do you start?
I think something that I see happen like all the time. So if this is in your organization, no judgment, this happens all the time. Companies will have a set of core values and they will make them into beautiful murals on the wall, and they'll do like mouse mats. I don't know, do people use mouse mats anymore? They'll put them on desktop backgrounds. They'll put them everywhere. And they'll probably talk about them and they'll include reference to them in town halls. But they never really explain, what do they mean? What does it actually mean in terms of what is expected for employees? I did an audit, a comms audit once for a company, and one of their core values was the word integrity. And I was really interested to understand, like, what do people think of this word? And I just went and asked, say, 30 different employees in that company, what does that word mean to you? What does that core value mean to you? And they all came back to me with different versions of like what they thought it meant for their jobs and what they thought it meant in terms of the behaviors associated with that. And the leadership team in this company were like totally shocked that there was so many different understandings. They assumed it was clear. What you can do to combat this, I think it's Zapier does this really well. If you Google Zapier core values, what they have laid out, I think it's on their public website. They have said, this is our core value, and then they have tips to apply this. So basically, the behaviors that are expected under this are, duh, 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 duh. And also the behaviors that like are not aligned to this are. Duh, 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 duh. So, for example, if your core value was respectful, you might say this means turning up to meetings on time, not looking at your phone when you're in a meeting, being polite with people, giving constructive criticism in a cordial way or a helpful way, or, and also set out what it doesn't look like. I think sometimes are we too afraid of being really clear and direct with people? I think clarity is great kindness. So when we're talking about values, like not just having the set of values, but like what do they mean in terms of the behaviors that you want people to display? Because that's what culture is. Culture is how we do things here. It's how people act and behave and show up every day. So that is something I would love to see companies improve on. It's a bit of work, but that would pay off so much.
Yeah, absolutely. A question for you both. For any comms or HR leaders sitting here today thinking, where do I even start? What's one practical action each of you recommend to start moving the needle on connection and culture, even just for this quarter? No theory, just real world steps that people can take.
I've got an example. So I think as we move more into an AI-dominated world, where we're expecting ChatGPT and all these tools to tell us what to do or write our comm strategies for us, I think we really need, as communicators, to be leaning back into the human touch. So a practical action that you can do straight away is to create a focus group. And we've recently just done that within our Global Business Services division. It is a relatively new division that we've just pulled together. And we did a call out. We asked for people who were interested in being part of it, and we were swamped. We had so many people that were just so happy to be asked to be included and help drive the direction of GBS going forward. And in this focus group, you can be asking them questions like, what actually brings you to work every day? What is it about the company that makes you stay? How do you want to be communicated with? What do you determine as good connection? And there will be so many nuggets of gold in there that your comms team can jump on straight away. And it's information an AI chatbot can't tell you.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, kind of, it's related to my, because I was going to say, if anybody follows me, you're not going to be surprised. I'm going to say, indulge your curiosity. I think the
Mm.
most effective communicators are not the people with all the answers or the best qualifications, the most experience. They are the people that ask the most questions. If I was really
Mhm.
honest, my business would be called the nosy route, but I just thought curious was like a nicer word rather than nosy. But I think if you're fundamentally nosy and you really want to get beyond the surface and understand what's really going on here, what do people really feel,
Mm.
what's really the problem, what are leadership really asking for, what does the business need, on and on and on. I have a 7 year
Mhm.
old who's just a barrage of questions all day long. That's the
Yep.
mindset. That's the mindset. Ask the questions, listen. And also, like, sometimes I think we need to learn to be quiet. Ask the
Mm.
question and then just like shut up. People, exactly what Cass has said, people will tell you
Mhm.
amazing things when they know that you are listening. So just
Mhm.
give yourself that permission to be quiet and listen and observe, and you will learn so
Yeah.
much.
So, like people love to talk about themselves. I know people may find that a bit icky, but we do, right? And I actually had in my notes a piece of advice to give earlier on, was to channel your inner 4-year-old. So you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you've got to ask questions, and when they give their explanation, you go, why? And then you keep going and you go, but why, but why, but why? And like a 4-year-old, you're either going to fall asleep because you're so exhausted, or someone's thrown a bag of lollies at you and told you to go away. But you've got to get into that mindset of being that voice, right? Because if you keep going, you keep saying why 2 or 3 times over, you're going to get the reality. You're going to get the real answer at the end of it.
I had a client actually send me an email earlier today and she said, I used one of your questions and I've used it every day and it's halved my workload. And I was like, oh, I don't even remember what questions I gave you. What question? So she was struggling with just a high volume of requests, loads of stakeholders. Can you send this out? Can you make this? Can you do this? And the question she started using was, what would happen to, or what are the risks to the business if we didn't communicate this now? And she said she got
Mhm.
loads of blank faces and they're like, there are no risks. And she's like, then maybe we don't need to communicate this now. And they were like, okay. And loads of work just disappeared. And I was like, wow,
Such a good
okay,
question. Yeah, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to
there
do
you
that
go.
today.
Love that. Love that. Thank you both for sharing. I guess there's been a prevailing theme that reaching these frontline employees where they are, and in a way that's easy for them is key. I'd love to ask the audience, how are you reaching your employees today? A certain tool, a channel, and what challenges are you having with this approach today? So we'll give everyone time just to drop their thoughts because it's a great time to share with the audience. And while people are having a little bit of a think about that, Joanna, what's your take? How important is, I guess, the correct tool that is used?
I mean, it's really important. Like, it's 2025. We've been investing in tools to communicate with our customers and our external stakeholders since as soon as those were on the market. That companies know that it's important to communicate well. And for some reason, the button still isn't like being switched for some leaders in terms of it's just as important, if not more important, to communicate effectively with your own staff. They are your most important stakeholder group. So when I'm thinking about tools, I'm kind of thinking of like three things I'd be thinking about in terms of a tool. I'd be thinking about like the business alignment part of it. So what does the business need? Is this going to give value to the business? Is it going to solve a genuine communications problem the business has, this tool? Is it going to fit? Then number two, is it going to fit with like employee preferences? Is this something that people will like to use, will want to use, will willingly use? Or are you going to have a battle on your hands? And the third is about like user experience. I mean, again, if we think about that customer experience, if you get a customer, if you get a newsletter as a consumer of a brand, it's going to be something gorgeous and beautiful, or you're using their website, it'd be lovely. Like, we need to give that consumer great experience to employees as well. Like, platforms like Workvivo are a really good example of doing this well. And it's a platform that people like to use and it's easy to use. You don't need to like train people, it's just intuitive. That's the level, that's the standard. So we have customers up here, we have employees down here. I don't want to do this, but I want to do this. I want to like bring the standards up so employees are treated just as well as customers are.
Love that. Love that. And Cassandra, what's your take? How important do
Yeah,
you
look,
think it is?
I couldn't agree with Joanna more on that. A couple of years ago, we made that conscious decision to take a marketing lens to everything we do because we were sitting there going, my God, look at all this amazing stuff we're sending out to our customers across all our brands and the care that goes into it and how much leaders are engaged with that messaging and why on earth aren't they doing that with internal comms? So we did things like bring HubSpot internally. So we use an external marketing platform to communicate with our employees because we can do things like segmentation and customer journeys and personalization. And that's had a huge increase in the way that our people engage with our comms. And so look, it is important that you're picking the right channel, but it's going to be trial and error to find out what's right for you. And you may land on one, and that will change within a year or two as society changes and the way that we interact with technology changes. Each organization has on average 4 to 7 different channels in play. We have more. And for the first time in history, we've got 5 different generations working side by side as well. So your audiences out there are made up of so many different groups. They've all got a different career history. They interact with technology different. They have communication preferences that are different too. So as communicators, become marketers, and you need to meet them where they are at. Go and find where they are communicating the most, and just get really comfortable with repeating yourself. So as communicators, we may have heard the same message 7 times over before it's even hit Frontline as well. So get comfortable with that. Go find where your people are at. And Joanna, I remember an example you gave on a webinar not that long ago when you were working for the Irish Police, and you said you would go into the break room and just sit there and watch and just have conversations. And I think that was such a great way of doing that. You're almost like David Attenborough in a way, like you're observing what the
Again, it's the
people are doing.
nosiness.
Yes.
And also, like, I'm such a true crime fan. So can you imagine my joy of being inside the police and just being able to go and talk to them? Like, dream come
Yeah,
true. Amazing job.
it would be.
Love it. I want to move over to some questions from our audience today, Cassandra and Joanna. So, Cass, I've got one here for you. You mentioned having 10 values. 10 values sounds like a lot. Some organizations struggle to embed 4. How do you go about embedding 10 and getting behavioral traction across a broad spectrum?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So we have our core values that are up the top. So we have 3. So ownership, irreverence, egalitarianism. The other 10 are the philosophies, and that kind of becomes the day-to-day way that we operate. So the philosophies are split in 2. We have one group of 5 and a second group of 5 as well. So they're things like our people, our customer, brightness of future, taking responsibility, egalitarianism, and unity. So those are things that are just sprinkled across everything that we do. The second part is around our business model. So that's ownership, reward and recognition. You're going to test me now. One best way, family, village, tribe, and profit that we're proud of too. So the way that we embed it, whenever we have a brand or a leadership team that's releasing a new strategy, those 10 philosophies are in there and they are laid out as well. So it's something that people are really familiar with. Now, in terms of tracking all 10, it does get a little bit difficult. Things like profit, that's very easy to track. Our people, we do that through things like a Great Place to Work survey, which we do globally as well. But we also look at things like tenure, retention rate, the focus groups that I talked about before as well. So lots of different ways to actually measure if we are getting the cut through.
That's great. Lots of different initiative behind those 10 values. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Cassandra. One for you, Joanna, that's popped up. What do you recommend to get around the founder syndrome? It's a very real thing when our C-suite want to hold very tightly to their way because they were there when it was built from the ground up. How do you introduce new experts into a space without getting the exec offside or making them feel threatened?
Yeah, so this can be a tricky one because it's not just about suggesting change, but you're trying to overcome what can be a very emotional resistance. I worked with a founder of a tech company who was doing a weekly town hall meeting, and I suggested that he should change it, perhaps to monthly or even quarterly, and it should have a very clear purpose, and it should be specifically for, specific content types, and it should be worth employees attending. And he wasn't having it. He was like, no, this is really important to me. We started doing this week one at the company. I will never change my mind. So I don't take no for an answer very well. So I went off and I had to think, and I went, you know what? I've actually approached that all wrong, because I approached this man that doesn't know me very well yet and doesn't probably totally trust me yet. And I approached him and said, I think this and I reckon this is a good idea. And I've made it all about me. So I thought to myself, that's very silly, because I should know better. It's actually about the audience, and he was my audience. So I thought about him. He was an engineer, and I knew that logic and data and evidence was very important to him. And I knew that money was very important to him. So I went off and I used a tool. I'm going to pop the name in the chat now when I finish this point. It's called the Gathering Effect. And they have this really good meetings cost calculator. So I went in there and I popped in like the number of people in the company and how often the town hall was and how long it took and the average salary in the company. And it spat out this huge figure. And I went back to him and I said, do you know what? We can absolutely keep this if you want. But did you know that every year you're pretty much costing the business $1 million every year? That's what this meeting is costing you. If you think there's $1 million of value in that, absolutely, let's keep it. And if not, let's maybe look at getting your communication out in a different way and reserving that live time with the CEO for something a little less frequent and more important. And you should have seen his face. He was like, oh my gosh. And he changed his mind straight away. So it was about thinking of what is he going to respond to? How can I influence him using what he cares about most? And how can I be clever about figuring that out? But I did it wrong, totally wrong the first time. So forgive me.
Love that. Amazing. Great strategy, Joanna. Thanks for sharing. We've got time for a couple of more questions. So the next one here is about the rituals you were talking about earlier, Cassandra. How do you balance the benefit of consistent rituals with the reality of diversity in the workforce?
Oh, that is such a good question. Look, I think for us, because our tenure is so long, right? Some of our leadership, gosh, we've got employees that have been with us all 40 years of the history of Flight Centre, all our executive, that 30 years plus. We don't tend to have a lot of employee turnover. Where we have new employees starting tends to be sort of at retail, and we call that novices, when we bring novices into the business. We do a really good job of what we call brand washing. So when they do join us, they are immersed into their brand from day one. We have a very excellent onboarding and induction program for each of our brands, and the rituals are pretty much there from day one. So we don't really struggle too much to make sure people are following them. Over time, look, they have slightly morphed as we see new generations start to come through. The rituals and the way that we communicate with them, the language that we're using does change and evolve over time as well. But we tend to find what we have in place. I mean, we're in 90 countries. You think about the diversity in there. Our rituals work across that whole organization in all those countries as well. But it's something we're always actively listening and taking feedback in about it too. But yeah, not a lot of change over the years. Yeah.
That's great. No, thanks for sharing, Cassandra. We've got time for one more question. So this is probably one for you both. How do you tailor your communications for different groups, for example, frontline teams and corporate offices?
Cass, do you want to go first?
Ooh, how do we do that? Yes, so it's really on the advice that we've given to this point is actually really getting to know your audience as well. So for us as communication teams, we do spend time in store where we can, and we are sitting alongside our travel agents, getting to know the way that they work or prefer to work and consume their information as well. So it's all just information gathering, and then you're taking that back and you're really trying to come up with a way that's going to work for them. Also, tone of voice is very important for us too. Each brand has a very particular tone of voice, and it makes communicating quite interesting when you are trying to write the comms as well. But getting to know that is really important too.
Yeah, I love that. And really, the only way you could properly ever tailor your communications to your internal audiences is, again, use your curiosity. You need to understand
Mm.
them. So you might have, like, even the language, further than the tone of voice, even the language might be different. If you're communicating
Mhm.
to a marketing department versus an engineering department, they will speak completely different languages. And with the
Mhm.
engineers, you might be using technical terms that another group might not understand. But if you simplify them or dumb them down for the engineers, they might get really annoyed with you and say, no, like,
Mm.
we understand the words. So you need to just understand the language they use. You also need to understand, like, what do they want to know? What's going to help them do their job? What's relevant to them? One of the main things I was kind of trying to do in the police was one of the main kind of complaints or sources of frustration among the police officers was we were just getting this barrage of information that is completely irrelevant. I do not need to know this. It's nothing to do with me. So that was trying to figure out, okay, well, what is all the stuff they need? What is all the stuff they are absolutely like frustrated by? And let's try to like redress that balance. But you don't know that unless you go and you talk to them and you ask them and you just listen. Which, by the way, is like my favorite part of working internal comms because your audience is right there. You can literally talk to them anytime you want.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. Well, powerful thoughts to close out the conversation today. We don't have time for any more questions, but we will get to those via responding to everyone. But I guess thank you both, Joanna, Cassandra, for such an open and insightful session today. It's genuinely been energizing to hear such honest stories and practical takeaways from the inside. I know we could easily keep the conversation going today, but sadly our time is now up for the day. But before we close out, a quick reminder about today's giveaway for everyone who's still tuned in to being the chance to win a $150 Visa gift card. Head over to our LinkedIn right now and do two things. Follow Workvivo by Zoom and post about today's event, tagging us. It's that easy. So huge thanks to all of you for joining today, whether you're leaving with a new idea, practical step, or just some fresh energy to take back to your teams. We hope today gave you some something genuinely useful. The on-demand recording will land in your inbox soon, so feel free to rewatch or share it with your colleagues. From everyone here at Workvivo, thanks again for being part of this incredible community, and we look forward to seeing you all at our next event. Take care and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.